Hello! So today I'm going to talk about the book Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. Okay, here's the rub. I actually loved this book. It was so good and everything I wanted in a YA book. The characters were all interesting and extremely vibrant, and this book is a perfect example of when switching perspectives is an excellent idea. Because I completely loved Nina, the overbrash, self-indulgent, and impulsive Grisha, but I don't think I would have loved 500 pages of her. So the 75 or so that I did get was just enough to make me fall in love without getting annoyed by her. And I think the same logic goes for all the characters in this book. They're all so extreme and all have such interesting and intense stories to tell that giving them an entire book by themselves would have been too much. But by breaking it up between them all, it had the ability to keep you constantly interested, which can be hard to do with so many characters. And I think the plot of this story really helped facilitate that. And the way the plot was designed lended itself perfectly to this type of thing, where we have all these characters that are just kind of like thrown together, and then as the current story progresses, we kind of get flashes of their pasts. And I don't know, I just really liked it. It reminded me a lot of the fantasy version of Ocean's 11 mixed with The Salt to the Sea, which is a historical fiction novel that I really loved. And so it was just so interesting to see how this group of 6 teenagers, how all of their stories all managed to collide into this one heist. It was such a fun and interesting way to go about this. I loved every minute of it. The only thing I will say is that the plot did still manage to have a flair for the over ridiculous that I don't think was quite necessary. But I've come to realize that this type of thing is this author's kind of thing, specialty. So it wasn't completely unexpected, but it was still a little disappointing. So much of the plot wasn't like that at all. So I had hoped that she'd grown out of it, but I guess not. Like literally blasting their way out of a country's stronghold / capital with high-powered tanks was a bit too over the top for me, and I couldn't help but roll my eyes a lot, especially at that part. It also makes you think that this country is probably still going to be coming after them. You don't walk away from something like that. So I think the whole riding into the sunset and only worrying about their problems back home was quite a bit naive and unrealistic. I think the escape could have been handled better, like finding a way that wouldn't bring to the attention and enrage an entire country and its military force might have been worth considering, but oh well. I will say, however, forcing Nina to sacrifice herself for their eventual actual escape did make up for the outlandish tank blasting a little bit, so they did have to pay somewhat of a toll before being allowed to ride off into the sunset. So that was good. But eliminating the tanks still would have been a better idea. But even if the idea of no retaliation is still very unlikely, that could easily be addressed later as well. I guess this does have a sequel after all. So the other thing that just completely rubbed me the wrong way about this book was the character Waylon's secret illiteracy. Why are authors so fascinated by this idea? Like, This is the second book I've read recently about an upper class, even like elite teenage boy who is completely illiterate and cannot read or write. And I really just don't get it. If it was just that he couldn't write and couldn't read very well, that'd be one thing. But even then, let's face it, would it really hold you back that much? Because he could have easily gotten a servant to write his letters and read to him. He had the means. His dad is like one of the wealthiest people. He could have made it happen. Here's the thing though. I know illiteracy exists. I'm not saying that it doesn't, but suggesting that this boy had dyslexia or some other form of learning disability so severe that it made it absolutely impossible for him to comprehend any type of written word is extremely far-fetched, to say the least. If he was like a street urchin who had never been educated at all, then I would buy it in a heartbeat. But the fact that he was part of the ruling class, educated by private tutors his entire life, makes me think that this situation is highly improbable. I'm really expected to believe that he can't even read a simple sentence like, "If you're reading this, then you know how much I wish to have you home." I only took 2 years of Spanish in high school, and I could probably read that sentence in Spanish. Is he also hiding that he's blind? Because, again, my first grader could read at least that much, and he is in no way advanced for his age. After 15 plus years, he would have at least been able to memorize that much, if not technically read. I'm not saying it's impossible that this could happen. I'm just saying the likelihood of someone being absolutely illiterate with access to the highest forms of education is a reality I can't understand. But then, not only is that impossible to understand, but then add on top of that this kid can also manage to have the skills to know 3 foreign languages, be a master chemist, and a math genius, even though he is blind to the written word, is pretty fantastical to me. If you have the mental capacity to learn or memorize a foreign language, you'd be able to memorize enough words to be able to read as well. At least at a 3rd grade reading level. So the only way this logic works is if this guy is actually secretly blind. I don't know how many chemistry lessons you've been in, but if you can't recognize basic letters, knowing how to make explosives from simple compounds is going to be very difficult. It's not the type of stuff you can learn by only doing without blowing yourself up. Anyway, okay. That's all I'm saying. And again, if your dyslexia is so bad that you can't read anything, and that is what the author claims, then you aren't reading numbers either. So yeah, that whole thing was a bit too much for me to swallow. She should have just gone with he was disowned because he was a homosexual line of reasoning. I really don't know what made her back out of that one, because it would have been way more plausible than what she went with. So, aside from that lapse in rational reasoning, the rest of the book was extremely well thought out, and it was a very fun journey, and I can't wait to read the next one. So, good luck everyone! Later pages!